break. Final word, cricket podcast. Adam Collins with the scratchy voice after 4 nights away with you. Jeff Lemon with me. Morris Blackburn Lawyers, Australia's #1 plaintiff law firm. They are our partners. They are our friends. They are our allies, or rather, we're allied with them in their work to help working people navigate their way through the legal system. We announced last week they'll be our presenting sponsor throughout season 18, and we're well chuffed about that. And we are meeting with them tomorrow to talk more about what will be the stories of Morris Blackburn that will be regaled to you on the podcast over the next few months. Over the last couple of months, it's been all about superannuation insurance and the complexity of that system and making sure that you know what you're entitled to, and working with Morris Blackburn to make sure of that in the event that you can't work due to injury or illness. But it's not just that either, is it, Jeff? It's that if there are any, if there's ever a time where you feel like you need to get yourself into that legal system, maybe it's a workplace matter, and you just feel daunted by what's on the other side of the table, it's Morris Blackburn, who so often work on a no-win, no-fee basis, who will be able to step up and provide you the support you require at your time of trial, literally, maybe, possibly.
Hopefully not yours, but they find themselves in situations, and a lot of people find themselves in situations where a company with a lot of resources and a lot of money and a lot of lawyers is taking on somebody who doesn't know the system. That's the Morris Blackburn specialty. That's where they want to get in on the side of the small player and make sure that they're well represented, and make sure that they're not being intimidated, bullied into settlement or concession by a bigger, better resourced partner that's been their guiding light through a lot of the cases that they've taken on over the years, and that's what they may be able to do for you.
Speaking of being bullied into outcomes, no, that's probably a bit of a crude segue, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Okay.
There's a new ECB domestic schedule review that's been announced during the week.
Okay.
This left a bit of a sour note in my mouth, like announcing it just as the new season's starting, because we know that what's really happening here is this is the part 2 of what was going on in the Strauss report a couple of years ago. There's still a desire to shorten the season. No one really knows how it's going to happen, because there's no way they can make the 50 over comp any less than it is. It sits behind the 100. The blast is commercially crucial for a lot of
the 50 over
clubs.
comp already doesn't exist. Like it's basically
it's
a negative competition. If you make 100 in the 50 over comp these days, they take 100 runs off your list A tally. That's how it works.
And then with the blast, understandably, a lot of the smaller counties, that's their biggest revenue stream of the whole year. They don't want that to be any shorter, even though the Professional Cricketers Association and a lot of players have been quite forthright about how demanding the blast schedule can be pinging around the country. So who has to give here? Well, it's going to eventually be 4-day cricket. So this is the Professional Game Committee, who are going to meet over the next 2 to 3 months. This has been set up with people such as the chair of Warwickshire's in charge of it. Steve Elworthy, who's the chief executive of Surrey, is involved, as are a few other county CEOs, the Professional Cricketers Association. And it feels to me like they are getting to this at a point where the ECB have a bit of strength here, right? They're about to dish out heaps of money from the sale of the 100. It feels like 10 games is off the table, but maybe 12 games is on the table, remembering that we're at 14 rounds at the moment. So can they get them over the line to reduce the championship from 14 to 12? Because this is the moment when they're giving the counties a lot more money than was previously the case.
Yeah. They're cash drunk. They've got everybody cash drunk. It's like one of those corporate sales hospitality things where, someone gets a company credit card and they take the reps from this company out to a lavish dinner and they buy them whatever they want and they get cocktails into them, and then they go, how about we agree on this contract where you're going to pay us X hundreds of millions to do this or to do that. They're all sloshed and they have bonhomie and they go, yeah, what a good time to do it. This is the time to do it. You throwing out cash to the counties. They're feeling rich, they're feeling flush, and they're not going to feel that way in a few years when a bunch of that money's disappeared. But right now's the time to try to get concessions and reshape the season towards more short form and less long form.
Well, 12 out of 18 counties will need to vote for it, right? That won't be easy. And we saw that with the Strauss report. That was dead on arrival because they were never going to get 12 counties over the line for what was being recommended there. With the way the 100 is placed right in the middle of the summer, and it's going nowhere. They've just done another TV deal which has the 100 right in the middle of it.
Probably just gets bigger.
This is the other thing. This will free up a little bit of space in a way to make the 100 bigger. And the 100, I said this on another show last week, how long before the Indian conglomerates, who are for the most part owning the 100 clubs, and those who have more than 50%, how long before they say, yeah, 4 weeks is good, but how about 8? And then what happens, right? And then where do we end up? There'll be a natural tension there that'll be difficult to resolve. But at the very least, you can see why there will be enough stakeholders who are interested in reducing the season from 14 to 12. So my advice to cricket lovers out there who want to see the championship as it is embrace the next 6 months. 2016 was the final season of 16 games in a county championship before it got reduced to 14. And indeed, 9 years on from that, 25 could be the last year where we have 14. I certainly hope not. Personally, I think with all of the rain interruptions in county cricket and the extra length of the season, that's the other thing that's lost in all of this. Like the way in which it all pieces together. We start playing on the first weekend of April, and we're still playing on the last weekend of September. This is a long stretch of time. And I know that the schedule's congested, but I still feel as though there's a place for 14 games. And the other challenge that we have here, of course, is that the draw is inequitable with Division 1 having the 10 teams and only having the 14 rounds. It's who you play or don't play a second time that can be something that can really affect the fortunes of a team. Again, stuff that had been resolved when we had 2 divisions of 9 way back when, and they played 16 rounds. It was home and away, and it was elegant. It's more difficult to facilitate that as it currently stands. I'm sure that 3 divisions will get raised again, because that was one way they were looking at it through the Strauss review, where you'd have a top tier of 6 and you'd play home and away and have 10 games all up, which feels like that's away from the conversation now. But this is all ahead of us over the next 2 to 3 months with this committee that's meeting and going to hand down recommendations to the ECB board.
It still seems to me like longer term going forward, how you try to fold it all together is that at some point the 100 and the Blast have to become one thing. There has to be a re-merger somewhere down the track where all of the counties can play the same short form competition, and maybe that's a 2-division system, and maybe that's what actually gives the space for it to be of a big enough size that it'll satisfy the broadcasters and fold in financial opportunities for all the counties. But that may well be a pipe dream. New England white ball captain Harry Brook, that announcement took place. It was kind of strange that it took so long. It seemed like the only obvious choice, really, and all of the back and forth about whether it would be Ben Stokes and whether they would ask him and whether they should ask him, and various comments and news reports about it being a 2-horse race and all this kind of stuff. It seemed like a bizarre consideration, really, to go, can you also do the one-day team, which will hardly ever play, but not be the T20 captain? That just didn't seem to make a lot of sense. Brook is the up-and-coming great talent, the already arrived great talent, really. Hasn't cracked it in the 50-over format, but what he's done in Test matches suggests that he should be able to at some point, and he'll be leading the side.
And it provides context around his IPL decision as well. I saw a little factoid saying he'll play 81 days of cricket for England this year because he's captaining the white ball teams. So presumably he'll play at all of them. And he's one of the first names on the team sheet, for, if not the first, given he's ranked number 2 in the world in Test cricket with the bat. He's got some experience, having led that England 50-over team against Australia last September, albeit to a series loss, but that was more about giving him a taste for it there. And his first hit out will be against the West Indies in May, when they're here for T20s and one-day internationals. And yeah, I agree that they probably could have made this call a month ago, but they, I suppose, wanted to give themselves some flexibility. If Brook said, no, actually, I'd rather not, they would have needed to have thought it through in more depth. But in the end, Harry Brook will be the new England captain. He won't have Ollie Stone at his disposal in the first series, at least. This is sad news during the week that Ollie Stone, who was one of the big positives of last summer, there weren't a lot of positives for England cricket last summer. Thinking about the Test team, there was absolutely Gus Atkinson, there was Jamie Smith, but under the radar, there was Ollie Stone, having had so many injury-compromised seasons with his back and that horrific surgery that he had to go under to bowl properly again. But unfortunately, it's now a knee injury. It requires surgery. He'll miss 14 weeks, which is basically the whole international summer as far as the Test cricket is concerned. So as it is with Mark Wood, Jeff, he's now, I would say, in a race against time to make the Ashes. They would definitely want Stone in contention for the Ashes, given the pace that he bowls at. But at age 32, which he will be by the time England reach Australia, that's not guaranteed, right? A 14-week layoff is substantial. He'll have no red ball cricket behind him, other than maybe some at the very end of the season, if he can get back then. So it's going to be hard yakka for a guy who we all hope can have something of a clear run with injuries at some stage.
We're into the time-honoured lead-up to an England visit to Australia for an Ashes, as the fast bowlers drop off with injury one by one, and we're left with a battery of medium-fast or fast-medium. So, yeah, Wood pretty unlikely. Stone pretty unlikely. Archer getting smashed around in the IPL and looking out of sorts, and is only a distant hope to play Test cricket at any stage again, I think, let alone in the next 6 to 9 months. The three who would have been named first as the real pace options for England, all looking a lot less likely than more to make that trip.
Rule it out, Jeff. First Test match, James Anderson will be there as the bowling coach.
Mm-hmm.
Stuart Broad will be there working on broadcast.
Mm-hmm.
And Chris Wokes will get the tour, I'd imagine, as well.
Yep.
You couldn't rule out having the same bowling attack that fronted up at Brisbane in 2021. Jimmy and Broad out of retirement. Wokes there as well. And Jack Leach as the spinner, potentially. I think that would be a very good shout, personally. And that to be the quartet to take on Australia as it was in 2021 in the case of Anderson and Broad, going all the way back to Australian tour as well, middle of the previous decade.
We had the India home schedule came out. This is interesting. Only 4 Test matches scheduled for them. So 2 against West Indies in October, 2 against South Africa in November. They'll play a bunch of white ball games. They've got 8 white ball matches against South Africa. And, finally, Guwahati gets a Test match, the 30th Test venue for India. They've been clamouring for it in the streets of Guwahati, and I quite enjoy this. Actually, this is one of the BCCR quirks that I think has something to be said for it, which is the spreading of the love. Like, why not have a Test match in as many places as you can have it? Why not add another entry to the grounds list on the drop-down menu in Stats Guru when you go to filter results by ground? And most countries have, some countries have 2 or 3, some countries might have 9 or 10, and then India will have 30 after the end of this year.
Yeah, given how long we had to wait for different Test venues in Australia, it's a very different story in India. Acknowledging that this is done to manage the internal politics at BCCR level, that's why they spread the love in this way. We had 3 in a row in 2017. There was Pune, there was Ranchi, there was Dharamshala. Indoor, no, that wasn't when we were there last. That Indoor had one before, hadn't they? They had 1 or 2 Test matches before. But yeah,
they had a couple.
The wider point
they were an emergency resort venue, weren't they?
Yeah, but still, you're right, though. The wider point stands that more people get to watch Test cricket. In saying that, the last time they tried a new venue out was when New Zealand were playing against Afghanistan. Would I be right in saying, Jeff, when they couldn't get on at all with difficulties last year? So they'll want to be on top of that. But yeah, I mean, the fact that the South Africa, I was a bit, that's a shame. I kind of get it's the minimum 2 Test World Test Championship thing. We all know that. But I would have thought that with South Africa making the final and them being great rivals, South Africa and India, over the years, so that would have been by default 3 Test matches. Unfortunately, though, that the last time South Africa hosted India, that was only 2 tests as well. So that's probably more a story about South Africa than it is about India in all of that, but also the story of modern Test cricket when only the absolute pinnacle series are getting the opportunity to be played for 3 or more.
I imagine it's the same as New Zealand cricket. They don't want to play longer series away because they don't want to owe anybody a longer series at home because they don't want to pay for the hosting costs. So they want their home series to be as brief as possible. Nice bit of news that came in. The MCC Spirit of Cricket Award has gone to Mel Jones with Catherine Ordway and Emma Staples for their work with the Afghanistan women's team. Some extraordinary reporting on what they did when in the middle of the chaos and confusion when the Taliban were taking over in 2021, and how those 3 pulled together and spearheaded a push to get as many of the Afghanistan women players out of the country as possible, and how it had to be done at the drop of a hat. They suddenly had to turn themselves into an international outreach organisation that was arranging visas, filling out forms, tracking everybody's family members, tracking the movements of players out of the country who were smuggling themselves out under various guises and excuses to try to get into Pakistan, from where they could get to the UAE, from where they could try to take the next step. And with, of course, most of the cricketers ending up in Australia, either in Melbourne or in Canberra, and the remarkable work that those 3 women did to help out all of the other women who needed to flee for their safety.
Yeah, and they were doing it when it was less fashionable to talk about these matters as well. This was in the teeth of things, and that great celebration that you attended, Jeff, at the Junction Oval. Celebration might be the wrong word, but trying to find some positive energy around what might be possible for these brave women who have left their countries or they've got family still in Afghanistan in dreadful situations. More power to Mel Jones and the team there who have put their money where their mouth is, so to speak, on this front, and really got involved. It's not just platitudes, this is hard yakka. So great to see that acknowledged by the MCC during the week. Staying with women's cricket, the England A Tour of Australia is well and truly underway. Unfortunately, 2 of the T20s were washed out, but the first T20, England did win. So after losing 16-0 in the senior series, they chased down 117-7 down. Grace Scrivens, who's captaining, made 35 and top scored after Mahika Goal took 2 for 10 from 4. So there's your next generation. Very obviously, Grace Scrivens is going to be the gun batter and Mahika is going to be the gun bowler. That's been set up for a couple of years now. In the first unofficial one-day international, England 214 for 9. Scrivens, again, with runs with 43. Holly Armitage is captaining the 50-over stuff. She made 43 as well. Sienna Ginger took 5 for Australia A. Now, she's a 19-year-old seamer from Queensland. And, you know, taking a chance, right? This is an opportunity to elevate your standing. If you're the next tier down or you're out of the pathway, this is the series to perform in. And so it's been for Georgia Vole, who's done so well in series like this before, making 137 not out in a convincing chase to win 5 down in just 42 overs. And in the second match of that, Australia thrashed them by 125 runs after they made 261 for 8. Talia Wilson, the Sydney Thunder batter, top scored with 68. England were knocked over for 136. Charlie Knott took 4 for 14. She's the Queensland offie who was also over here last year playing in the 100. Still young as well, 22 years of age, so a lot of good cricket ahead of her. And yeah, these are the types of names, Jeff, that are going to filter into the main team probably as soon as next year, because there's a 50-over World Cup in September and October this year, which will be the logical, you'd imagine, the logical point where these teams will start to regenerate. So I know there's a T20 World Cup every other year, but as is always the case in men's cricket as well, 50-over cycles tend to be what dictate the movement of players getting towards the end of their careers. So you'll get the chance to see someone like Charlie Knott rocking up and getting senior caps sooner rather than later.
September 2025, which means I suppose there's that Ashes tour, which would be, but won't be in 2027. It would be a year before that or a year after
I think it's
that?
Next year. I'm pretty sure it's next year in 26. So yeah, we're not far away from that all starting again. And
right.
That's
well, that might also be a point where, you know, having drawn the last one, there might be some players saying, I'll give England one more shake and go out with a win there. There are a lot of points where you could jump off. There are so many World Cups and tournaments these days. I think we're going to squeeze in a little nerd pledge before we go to the last break, and then you're going to talk to the Spanish coach, and then you're going to talk to Ben Jones about the IPL. This is how we do things on this show.
Easy show.
Nerd pledge. It's a game we play with nice people on the internet who fund the final word. They send in an amount of currency in a specific configuration, a number that relates to cricket in some way. We have to figure out what it means. So this is a revisit because Sam Ashworth's number was on the show ages ago now. Story time 191. It was £3.43. It was about a first for Lancashire. And I talked about Stephanie Lloyd and Janet Entwistle, who were some of the first women members of Lords, while also representing Lancs. Sam came back to say this was a very good answer that he enjoyed, but the match part of it needed to be interpreted as a cricket match, one that predated some of the early unofficial county championships that I talked about. And since this was a very county championship show, this seemed like an appropriate revisit to be doing. So what's a particular type of match that Lancashire plays and has done for a long time? The Roses. That's when they play Yorkshire. One of them's white, one of them's red. Still a big deal in the county calendar, but they're not in the same division this year, so there won't be any Roses games. Do they count like T20 Blast games as Roses games?
They do get marketed and billed that way. But, I mean, it's the 4-day stuff where they get really up and about. We spoke to, when interviewing Keaton Jennings last week, it was that he made a big 100 in a Roses game that was on television that kind of got him back into the consciousness of people who follow selection closely. And a Roses game where both teams are in Division 1, like that's the stuff that gets people going. Yorkshire got relegated in 2022, so they'll miss again in 25, and it'll be the T20 version and maybe even the 50-over version. It'll be, as you noted before, a very second-tier event where they get their fill.
I remember there was a point where Rugby League was trying to market Australia versus England in Rugby League as the Ashes game, and it was
Now we're into my special spot, Jeff. Now you have entered an area of inquiry that is one that I have. Winnie's on school holidays next 2 weeks, right? And I can guarantee that we will watch every episode of the Gladiators season 1 and season 2 multiple times. We are very into Gladiators. in this household. It came back last year over here. Dynamite is her favourite, but even Peggy knows all of the different signature moves for all the different gladiators over here.
Is Kimberly Joseph still involved?
Unfortunately, Mike Whitney's not, nor's John Alexander. But it is a terrific thing. And
was that your plan?
Yeah. Well, there was some talk of an Australian reboot as well. That was the Gladiator Ashes was the best use of Ashes, I think, back in '96 when the bloke who had the John Platten haircut knocked off the Poms. That was special stuff as a 12-year-old boy. They did a simulcast. I don't quite know what time of day it would have been to have made that work, but they did the simulcast Eurovision style where it was at the wrong time of day for one country. That's what we need to see back. I want Australian viewers to get to experience everything that we are over here at the moment. Next time there's like a shopping centre visit with the Gladiators in London, I can guarantee that one Winifred May Collins will be wanting me to get her in the queue for it.
With I'm trying to remember their names back in the 90s. You had Hammer,
Delta.
You might have had Viper.
Viper's over here. Viper's the one who's the bad guy over here. But who was the guy who? Oh, there was the bloke, the bad guy, Vulcan. Vulcan played the role as the bad guy, didn't he?
That's right. That's right.
Anyway, happy times.
So what I'm saying is a Roses game in a T20 might be a bit like a rugby league Ashes game. You know, not quite the real deal. It comes from the War of the Roses, which is not the movie with Kathleen Turner. It's a 22-year war, very Game of Thrones style, between House Lancaster and House York. They end up basically screwing each other up so that the Tudor dynasty takes over. A bit like the Ashes, Yorkshire and Lancashire start playing in 1849, but their games are not called Roses games until 1867. I could not find out why. I did quite a bit of research trying to track this down, but I couldn't find anything on the origins. Was it just marketing chat? Was it stuff in the newspaper? There's nothing on the scorecard that says Roses game. Anyway, they play it in 1867 at a place called Whalley, Station Road in Whalley. I don't know if that's an outground you've ever encountered in your county wanderings. But two factors here. One, Yorkshire very much the stronger team at this point. They're the big brother team. Two, Monkey Hornby's first-class debut is for Lancashire in the very first Roses game. Isn't that beautiful?
Monkey must be one of the most cited Storytime players ever.
Big time.
Nothing will quite compete with when he appeared at the SCG ride of 1879. So he's been a regular feature of our live shows as well. But, you know, here too is Monkey Hornby. Love to see him.
Once he ripped his shirt off and tied up a member of the crowd and imprisoned him in the England dressing room, that was it. Favourite for life. Anyway, prominent Lancashire guy for like 50 years, does a lot for the club well after playing. This was an era of 3-day games and draws, but Yorkshire are so strong that they absolutely batter Lancashire, not just the first time, but a bunch of times. So by an innings, then in the same season again by 167 runs, then in the same season again by an innings, then in 1868 the next year by an innings. And then they don't play for a couple of years. I'm not sure why, but maybe Yorkshire are just like, Lancashire's not good enough, we're not going to play them. 1871, they play for the fifth time, and Lancashire lose by 222 runs. So basically, they just can't make a run against Yorkshire. In these 10 innings, their highest score is 159. The other 9 scores are all under 100. They get bowled out for 30 at one stage, 34 at one stage, 57. Can't bat. And then in 1871, after getting battered a month earlier, they butter up. They go back. They tour. They go to Bramall Lane, and they walk out and they make 343. And the clouds part and the angels sing. And for the first time, Lancashire have made a score against Yorkshire. Monkey Hornby's made 49. Even better than that, their number 8, a guy called Arthur Appleby, makes 99. And the number 11, Bill Hickton, makes 55. These are partnerships in contrast. Those two don't actually even bat together because they're 6 for 159 when Appleby comes in. And they've added 120 when he gets out. So he makes 99 of 120. And then the other fella who he's batting with just keeps blocking it while the number 11 comes in and tonks 55. So Appleby, having made 99 in this partnership, then comes out and bowls 51 overs, takes 5 for 87. They have the joy of making Yorkshire follow on for the first time. And then Appleby backs it up with another 48 overs. So he's bowled 99 overs across the 2 innings, 3 for 54, leaves them a chase of 20, and they win. They get their first win. So that was the 6th time of asking, as per Sam's clue. It was a first for Lancashire, and it's got to be their first Roses win. That is my answer for you with the 343, which is the score that they made in the first innings, Lancashire, to set up that win. There you go, Sam.
Yeah, 99 problems and took 9 wickets. There you go. A bit of extra colour here before we round this out. I'm told by Tubes in our chat here, there is the Rugby League Ashes this year. At the end of this year, it's returning.
Really?
And Tubes is going to all 3 of the test matches between Australia and Great
Of course he is. Quite reliably. Everyone who said, you guys don't know enough about rugby league, you need to know more about rugby league on your show. Well, we have a producer who knows about rugby league, and that is as far as we're going to go.
And Hammer from Gladiators played in the Rugby League Ashes in 1990. Mark McGraw. There you go.
No.
There's an extra fact.
No.
So to go full
How does that? Oh, did he also play in the Gladiator Ashes?
I doubt it's the same Hammer. There's a Hammer at the moment. I don't think Hammer from 1990 could possibly be. Let's have a look here. Tubes is back in the chat. Yes, he did. He was in the Gladiator Ashes apparently as well. So how good is that for a crossover?
He's a dual Ashes international. Unbelievable. We've got to get him on the show.
Go the Hammer. Before we go to our second break, a word for our new friends at Odin Mortgage and Tax. I'm thrilled that we've got these guys working with us. I just realized, over the weekend, just how many people in my world are expats who have moved over to live in the UK for various reasons, to play sport in the UK or whatever it is. And they still fundamentally consider themselves Australian, and they still have responsibilities in Australia, financial responsibilities in Australia, and they're trying to balance.
Still got to file a tax return.
Yeah, still trying to balance all of these things off. And in order to do so, they would be well served in seeking support. So there's the tax piece to this, where you can get Odin to review what you got going on for $300. $300 very well spent. Better invest it early. It's like an inoculation. Get the tetanus injection. Don't get tetanus. Well,
what you're saying is that Robert Kennedy Jr. will not be consulting Odin Mortgage and Tax. Is that what we're saying?
No, he won't be getting the tetanus injection. He'll be getting tetanus at some point. So Odin, that for you on tax, but on the mortgage side of the business as well. Let's say you want to go home and you've lived in the UK or lived in the States or lived in the subcontinent or whatever it is for a number of years, and you want to set up at home back in Oz before you actually jump on that flight, before you jump on QF1. You don't want to be arriving cold. You want to have your shit together. And this is what Odin do for you as well. They will do the work for you. They've got an individual concierge service. So once you're in with them, you get looked after one-on-one. They've helped 2,000 expats in 40 countries, right? So they know what it means to have your ducks in a row when you're living in a different country, especially when you're kind of working out where you might be in the future. It's a timely and prudent thing to get Odin on your side. So all you need to do is go to the link in the show notes, which is right at the top there of our show notes. Click on that. It'll send you to a splash page, which is us. And then from there, you get on to speak to one of the people at Odin Mortgage and Tax. Tell them that we sent you. Tell your fellow Australians living in the UK that this might be something that could serve you very, very well indeed. And if you plan on living here for a while anyway, I would recommend not doing the tax stuff on your own. That is a fucking nightmare. $300 to get them to help you, it will be an investment in your sanity as well as your finances. On the other side of this, we're moving to what we described in the interview as the sleeping giant of European cricket. You'll get a taster here for 15 minutes, and then there'll be so much more to say about Spanish cricket, I suspect, in the time to come. We didn't really get into this in the interview, Jeff, but next year, it's ever so likely they will play in one of those tournaments that could get them one-day status, which would mean so much for Spanish cricket. They're this far away, I'm pointing at the screen. They're an inch away from getting government funding, which means they can start to travel the world and play bilateral cricket. And this is we're heading towards their big shot. So the man who's been overseeing all of that is Corey Rutgers, and he will be with me after the break on The Final Word.